somebody else I may come out with here in the next few weeks that I've been holding off on that in the last year has been projected super high. And I don't, I'm really thinking through whether I don't want to defame anybody. I mean, I won't, but it's another thing where their expectations are so high and the guy will never, ever meet it.
Who are you talking about that is going to be a bust like this?
Well, I'm sorry, I should have said that, but
yes,
I
you can't drop a tease like that on us, Jonathan. That's not paying off on the tease. That's not working.
I promise I'll get back to you guys. And in fact, I'll tell you first.
Our next guest is a man of his word. He is the director of the Brain Types Institute. Jonathan Niednagel joins us on the OnStar hotline. For all of his information, you can go to his website, www.braintypes.com. Now, you just heard when he was on with us, this was about 2 months ago, he promised us that he had some information on someone who was extremely highly rated.
Right.
Now, let's make clear, he's not coming on and saying this guy is going to be a bust.
Right.
But from his analysis, and I read, he sent us a very thorough packet of information, which I've looked through. And, Jonathan, we welcome you back to Mike and Mike in the Morning. You have concerns about this player's ability, due to brain type, to live up to all of the hype that he has received.
Well, good morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning.
Yes. Just to qualify matters, in my line of work, I'm asked to assess people all the time, and I guess it's just a matter of perspective. Basically, if you look out in the woods, I say that's an oak tree and that's a pine tree and whatever else, and so sometimes the perspective comes where a more negative light is taken on it. But there is a quarterback, very highly rated, that to me doesn't have the optimal wiring that people basically are projecting upon him, not knowing type, but just thinking that he's got all the tools that will make him perhaps the top quarterback in the NFL.
Well, and now, before you mention who it is, let's go back. The last time we talked to you, you had, when the two top quarterbacks in the league coming into the league were going to be Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf, you were one of the few, if not the only one, and you told GMs and coaches that you didn't think Ryan Leaf was, to use your terms, wired the right way, and you didn't think he would pan out in the NFL, and you couldn't hit the nail on the head any better with that one. So that being said, which direction are we going now with what quarterback?
Well, yes, and I did have to stick my neck out, and I'm doing it again, but in a different way, and that's after it broke to the media. I didn't spread it, but I did pass that information along that Ryan's wiring was not optimal at all, and that, to lower their expectations. Well, the fellow that we're addressing here today is named Carson Palmer, that obviously everybody in football knows. And just to start off, and on my website you'll see this, I mean, I've got pages of accolades regarding Carson. I think he's the most wonderful person on the planet. He's got everything going for him, tools, you name it. But, again, his inborn configuration makes it where his motor skills, his spatial skills, and even his mental or emotional aspects will be taxed under big-time pressure.
Now, you're going to release all this information. We are actually exclusively announcing this right here, and we appreciate you promised you would do it, and you are, and you'll be releasing this to all the media coming up a little bit later today. And you know what happens, Jonathan? We live in a black-and-white world, and everyone's going to say, Jonathan Niednagel says Carson Palmer is going to be a bust. So let's make clear exactly what we are and aren't saying here about Palmer.
Okay. Excuse me. Again, I'm not at all saying that he's going to be a bust. In fact, I put in on the report that he's going to have some very outstanding games. He can take his team to the playoffs. He can even win a Super Bowl conceivably. However, he's not your pull the rabbit out of a hat kind of a guy. In fact, there's so many comparisons that have been made to him, and let's say Dan Marino, John Elway, even a Troy Aikman, or people like that, these big QBs. Well, their brain type is quite different. They're more right brain. They're more fluid. They have better spatial awareness. They have all these little aspects of each of their brain type that make them the consummate quarterback in the NFL. And based on my analysis, even Joe Montana, Joe Willie, and back to Johnny Unitas all had that same design. And there are only 3 of them in the NFL right now that are playing or starting. But Carson has a type that is the only one like it I've ever seen in the NFL at quarterback. So I've watched him in other sports. I've watched him below the professional level. And just to say that, if they're coached properly and they're put in the right kind of a situation, they can do well. But if you don't do that, then you're going to see them getting more uptight and not performing nearly what you would think they should.
And to put it in layman's terms so people can understand what you're saying, and I read this whole report, and there are you're right, glowing quotes about what everybody thinks this guy could do, but you have quotes from an NFL quarterback when Carson Palmer was involved in a quarterback competition, not pulling the string, placing it rather than just throwing it. You had, I think, Brian Billick quotes in there talking about some quarterbacks coming in like Leftwich, Carson Palmer, and I forgot the other one, him giving a line that they needed to work on. And for Carson Palmer, it was, doesn't show the leadership skills. It seems like in reading this, that's where you were leaning, and the way you call his brain type is that of an assistant. So basically, are you saying that he just doesn't have the leadership capabilities, basically, to be that main focused guy of the quarterback?
Well, let me just say this. There's nobody who will assume more self-responsibility than Carson. There's but nobody who will be more sincere. There won't be anybody who will be more of a team guy. He is the consummate. But if you're talking about, and actually, again, in my research, the front of the brain is the executive area of the brain. It's the one that says, go for it, let's do it, has incredible aggression. Even the Montanas, who didn't say a whole lot, still had that in their brain. And Carson, based on my perspective, isn't wired in that region of the brain where he's a little more kicked back in the sense that he's not so dogmatic, he's not so overbearing. And if you pick up everything that he's ever said anyway about people, he's very gracious. And he does, not that he can't get on a guy and stuff like that, but and that's what Billick saw, is that he felt that was a concern. So in terms of a real strong leader, whether it's by word or not word, that'll be something that Carson has to work on real hard. And I know the coaching staff has already been doing that. In fact, if you see on that article, the coaching staff has been having him to try to yell out plays louder so that the guys can hear what he's saying, because he has more of a withdrawn voice, which is typical for people who are wired more like himself.
And what Brian Billick did say, he said about Kyle Baller, this was before they took the draft, he said, Kyle's issue, his little flaw was accuracy. Leftwich was mobility. With Carson, it was his leadership. He's not quite as dynamic a personality as the other two.
And again, Jonathan Niednagel, director of the Brain Types Institute. You can get all this information on Carson Palmer and a ton of other stuff. He analyzes people in every walk of life, not just sports, but he is extremely well respected by a lot of NFL front offices in particular, and is, for what it's worth, also a big sports fan, so he knows sports from sort of a living it and breathing it kind of way. www.braintypes.com is the website. And again, Jonathan, you are a man of your word. Thank you very much for doing this with us today, and best of luck. We'll check in with you again real soon.
All right, guys. Good being with you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Jonathan Niednagel. Again, you can take from this what you will.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, oh, what does he know? And then, but just trust me when I tell you, there are a lot of people inside the National Football League who listen to what this guy has to say.
Well, and more go to the psychological part of it, the brainwave type part of it. I'm a little more old school in that, and this wasn't the conversation to question him about any of it. I mean, this is his report. This is what he does. I don't buy into it as much. But then again, I've been out of the game for a while, and I do know the game right now, that there are coaches, there are GMs that do want to know the psychological makeup of a player, especially one that's supposed to be the leader of a team. So it makes for interesting reading. There's no doubt about that.
The reality of it is, Mike, that, I mean, to be a great athlete, you have to be physically gifted, and that just does not mean big and strong. But you talk about some of the great players. You talk about their vision. All right, that's something that you don't think about. Ted Williams, and you talk about here a lot of the great hitters, they can actually see the laces on the ball spinning as it comes toward them. People have great vision. People have extraordinary intelligence. Helps in a lot of different ways. Those are things that do make a difference. And so this is what he analyzes, and he's telling you that there are limitations in that way on Carson Palmer. He's not saying Carson Palmer is the next Ryan Leaf. No, but he's saying he does not think Carson Palmer is the next John Elway either. We're Mike and Mike in the Morning. Here's Bob in Sports Center.